Welcome to the Huddle Within podcast, where we go beyond the surface to uncover the real impact of sports on our lives, whether it's lessons of resilience, the passion that fuels us, or the stories that connect us all. This is where the game gets personal. I am Daniel, a regular sports fan just like you, and together we'll explore what sports truly means beyond the surface. So step right into the huddle and let's get into it. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Huddle Within podcast. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in today. If it's your first time and you do enjoy this episode, feel free to give 5 stars and also feel free to engage into the comments as well. And for those that have been listening for the last 30 episodes, I need your help. At the moment, we've hit, obviously, this will be the 31st episode, but 30 episodes before. We've done a whole range of different type of topics. We've discovered different type of sports. We've spoke about different type of sports. We've had different types of people across all different categories of sports. We've had journalists, we've had athletes, we've had friends of mine, we've had people from different parts of the world. And I just want to know what sort of your favorite content has been. And the reason why I'm asking for this is, quite frankly, the podcast is great. I thoroughly enjoy doing it. I thoroughly enjoy talking to you guys about a whole lot of different topics, but I'm lost. And what I mean by lost is that there are so many different avenues we've gone through, but there isn't a definitive theme for the Huddle Within. And I guess for the first 30 or so episodes, that was okay, because I think for me, it was more getting sort of used to the podcast feel and also tapping into some different audiences. But I would love for you guys to collectively come up with suggestions or things that you really enjoyed in this sort of 30 episode sample size. And let's keep that, I guess, more niche in the sense of what I'm talking about there. So whether it's a specific sport, whether it's a specific type of podcast that we do, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments as well. There are some plans to sort of restructure the Huddle Within. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing the podcast, but there might be some different types of episodes moving forward. There might be some different themes moving forward as well. Guests are hard to come by, and it's great getting them on there, but it's also difficult to get people regularly on the Huddle Within, especially those that sort of relate to the audience. We've had a lot of amazing guests so far, but again, it's been very broad and it's been very tailored to a specific interest in sport. So again, we've hit 30 episodes. I can say we've got a pretty decent sample size there. And for those that have listened to all 30, and including this one, 31st, 31, thank you so much for tuning in. And it really goes a long way. Obviously, I want the huddle to grow. We want this community to grow. We want to get people in that love sports and see sports the way that we do, as I always say. But when it comes to that, it's really heavy on the people that are listening to give that, I guess, feedback as to what they prefer and what they want. So quite frankly, there hasn't been a plan for this episode. There's no guest here. Obviously, you can see myself. There's no the Huddle Within versus a specific team or sport. We've had the Huddle Within versus Collingwood, the Huddle Within versus Liverpool FC. But today, it's just me and it's myself. And we're not going to dive too much into sort of deeper topics today, because the fact that this hasn't been planned well, and also not something I really want to talk about on this week's episode. So instead, I thought, and it's funny when I say this that I want to make this more niche, I thought I'd probably dive into a few different sporting updates and give a bit of a different structure. And as I look at my list of the different sports I have on the other screen, we're going to be diving into basically each sport, maybe spend 5 or so minutes on each one and kind of give you the current updates and news at the moment and what's going on. And I guess we can go for there. But basically, this episode, consider it as a filler episode as we sort of transition into stuff that is going to be happening for the Huddle Within moving forward. And I'm really excited to bring that to you guys as well and speak about that, and also put that into a podcast as well. There's going to be, as mentioned, changes, but also some big updates coming forward as well, which I'm really excited about. Before I do get into it, still got the Huddle merch. So I got the hat here. selling the hoodies as well. And as we ramp up into spring summer season here in Australia, t-shirts will also be coming out. So if you are interested in any of those, feel free to hit me up on the Huddle Within socials, or even my personal if you have that, for further information on that. But without further ado, I guess we'll dive straight in, and we will start with, I guess, the Premier League. So as it stands, the Premier League has ramped up. The highlight feature of the match was Manchester United taking on Manchester City, and United lost 3-0 there. So going to start with obviously my favorite team, as I like to do. For United fans, we've obviously hoped for a better start to the season, but it hasn't happened on a results front. However, in terms of positive play and on a performance, I guess, front, I have seen some drastic improvements, especially in terms of how we attack and our intent. The problem with at the club at the moment is that we are unable to translate that performance into results. And unfortunately, when it comes to the Premier League, results are the most important thing at the moment. You look at a team like Liverpool at the moment, who have won all their games so far. Can you say that their performances were the best, especially against Burnley and Newcastle? Probably not. But the difference is they got the results. They won another game in extra time with a Mohamed Salah penalty, and they get the all-important 3 points. And I'm not saying that for those Liverpool fans listening that United's performing better than Liverpool. I don't think that's true. Liverpool are levels above us. But even when they aren't performing, they are managing to get victories here. And that is the big contrast with us being at the top to compete for titles to where we are at the moment. And that is barely scraping a European qualification position. And I think for every United fan, the goal is to get a European qualification spot. At the worst, Conference League. Ideally, if we get Europa League and Champions League, we're overachieving big time. But that Conference League spot is probably where we're realistically in at the moment. And losing to Man City 3-0 is disappointing, given that City are in bad form. But I can be encouraged with the result, or the performance rather than the result. And if you look at the performance, 55% possession at Etihad Stadium. Now, you can say that stat is flawed, given that Man City were probably just sitting back and didn't think that they were going to score goals. But for a club like us to be able to hold possession of the ball against one of the teams that are the best at holding the ball, it's a positive sign. Very good starts coming out the gates, especially in the start of the first 15 minutes of the first half, and also the second half as well. But again, nothing that translated into any wins. So United still keep to struggle on that front, and they do have some tough fixtures moving forward. I think they've got, Sunderland, not next week, but Sunderland's coming up. We've got Chelsea coming up, I think, next week, and about 3 or 4 weeks later, Liverpool as well. And Brentford, I'm pretty sure, is on there too. So a pretty tough run there going forward for Manchester United. As for other teams in the league, Chelsea draw against Brentford. Brentford have a pretty positive performance. A lot of people have penciled them to sort of be one of the relegating teams, as they have notoriously sold a lot of their players. But they're in a good place competing at the moment. You've got Everton that are looking quite solid at the moment. I actually watched the game last game against Aston Villa at their new stadium, and they really should have won the game. They played positive, but they were only able to salvage a draw against Aston Villa. And then looking at other top teams, you got Tottenham defeating West Ham 3-0, and Arsenal defeating Nottingham Forest 3-0 as well. We had Zubamendi scoring 2 goals for the Arsenal on Ange Postecoglou's debut match for Nottingham Forest. It's great to see him have a job, and you've just all reminded me that the emergency huddles have been lacking, and a lot of people want the emergency huddles. So I'm going to try my best to bring those back. I think I missed a very key emergency huddle period a couple months back, given that there were so many football moves happening. But that's occurred, and yeah, Ange Postecoglou is now the coach of Nottingham Forest. A Greek descent, same as the owner, so hopefully they get along pretty well. We obviously know what happened with Nuno and the current owner previously, and they didn't really get along. But hopefully, for Ange's sake, he's able to do that. Obviously, a first match against Arsenal at the Emirates is not a good sample size to determine whether Ange can manage this team, but I'm pretty sure he will do a decent job. However, I do think Nottingham Forest aren't the same as last season, so hopefully the owner isn't thinking the same as as what they were, because I think Ange is going to struggle to achieve the same result. But hopefully, I guess a mid to top table is a realistic achievement for Forest, and I think Ange at the helm might be able to overachieve there, hopefully for Australians' sake. But he's back in the Premier League. It's always good to see Ange back, coaching top tier level football, representing us Australians on the highest level is great. And you also had Jared Gillett, I think, refereeing one of the games this week again, which is always a good thing too. I think he actually did referee the Everton game. Trying to think if it was that one or whether it was the Arsenal game. But again, Arsenal get a victory, Tottenham get a victory, Manchester City get a victory, Liverpool get a victory, and Chelsea salvage a point while Manchester United continue to struggle. And at this point, you can't even put them in the Big Six team. They're probably the only team that could potentially replace them there at the moment is Newcastle with their new striker getting their first goal of the season and scoring the winner there. He really looks like Peter Crouch, which is quite funny. He's obviously a tall striker, but even the way his body mechanics sort of flow, he's showing that he can be very similar to Peter Crouch, especially with a headed goal as well. And Newcastle, they lose Isak, as mentioned in that Liverpool podcast, which I do recommend you to check out. We do talk about the saga with Alexander Isak that ends up Isak leaving and them getting two strikers in Vladimir and Wissar. So Newcastle still look to be up there. Hopefully, they're able to sort of, elevate in that aspect. And then with some other teams, I think they continue to get some decent results. I haven't checked the results this morning, but I'm pretty sure there was a game happening today. We had Leeds that came down to a loss to, I'm pretty sure it was, and if I look here, Fulham 1-0 as well. That was a big result. And you had Bournemouth beating Brighton 2, and Crystal Palace Sunderland drawing 0-0 as well. So Sunderland are looking to be a very defensively solid team. And as I look at the table right on my phone, they're currently at 7th place. Everton at 6th, which obviously it's early, but quite a good start. And you also got Bournemouth currently on 9 points too. So Liverpool are the ones that are remaining undefeated there. And as I mentioned, with their results, that's what matters because their performance hasn't been the best. In the sort of relegation front, we've got West Ham, Aston Villa, and Wolves. I don't expect Aston Villa to be there for that long. I expect Wolves there to be there for the whole season. I reckon they're going to be one of the teams that relegate. West Ham always and also look like they're relegating as well. And then I think it comes down to Leeds and Burnley taking the last spot. If not, West Ham just scraping up. But definitely see Wolves relegating and either one of Leeds or Burnley for sure, and West Ham the way it's looking at the moment. So we might see some few manager turnarounds. Graham Potter might get sacked, or if any of these managers do get sacked, they might be able to turn around whoever comes in. So keep an eye on that. But the Premier League is looking very strong. From a championship perspective, since we want to cover that, at the moment, we're looking to see Middlesbrough coming up next year, potentially, the way they're going, 4 wins and a draw. That will obviously bring 3 of the sort of North English teams in the Premier League, which will be a great sight to see. Middlesbrough, Newcastle, and Sunderland. I'm very keen for that Sunderland and Newcastle battle, by the way, when that comes up. And you've got Stoke, and Stoke is second. Could you imagine seeing Stoke back in the Premier League? I think that would be really, really cool to see. It'd be great for the Premier League to have Stoke back. We all remember the times where people always question whether they can play on a coldy rain night there with their long throws and sort of set piece mentality. The Stoke that I remember in the glory days was with Tony Pulis, who overachieved with that team really highly. But since then, they haven't been back in the Prem. So it'd be great to see them. We also had the South England derby between Southampton and Portsmouth, which finished 0-0. Portsmouth for a long time haven't been in a better position than Southampton, and in the first time they're above them on the table, and it was a Southampton home game. Portsmouth managed to salvage a draw and take a point away from Southampton in St Mary's, which is big, and Southampton's comeback campaign to go back to the Premier League after getting relegated is not looking too good at the moment, and I think the way they performed last year really hit them because they were not good at all. But I guess that pretty much wraps up the sort of Premier League rundown. We have Champions League coming up this week. I think Atletico and Liverpool are going to be taking on each other. You've also got a few other strong matches, I'm pretty sure, if I'm looking at my trusty little mobile device as I check. We have PSG Bayern Munich and Chelsea and Liverpool and Atletico, I think highlighting the Champions League games. If you want to count Newcastle and Barcelona, that's another big one at Newcastle's home ground, and Man City taking on Napoli. I've pretty much named all Premier League teams that are highlighting the games at the moment. You've also got Juventus and Dortmund, which will be quite a big game as well. But yeah, Champions League is back as of tomorrow, and the first time in a long time I've seen 3 Champions League days in a row. I'm really a big fan of this new sort of structure, to be honest. So Champions League's coming up, and football is ramping up big time as well. This is where sort of teams start to utilize their squads. You've got new signings across the board, and I don't know who's going to win the Champions League this season. I think it's going to be very difficult to decide who will win. You'd think that Real Madrid would win it, but you don't know with the team being overly stacked. I think it really paid a costly price last year. So yeah, that's pretty much all the football talk. That pretty much wrapped up for over 10 minutes, and we were able to cover a lot of things there. Just wanted to take a moment to thank you guys for tuning into another episode of the Huddle Within podcast. If you do enjoy episodes like this, or this episode specifically, be sure to leave a comment and a 5-star review wherever you do get your podcasts. It'd be also great if you could like and subscribe wherever you do get your podcasts, so we can continue to show this out to people that see sports exactly the way that you do. But without further ado, let's get straight back into it. We got the AFL finals this week, so we're up to the prelim finals. We've got Geelong and Hawthorn going at it on Friday, and then on Saturday, which I managed to get my tickets for. Shout out to Channel 7 for organising those with me. Brisbane and Collingwood at 5:15. It's a twilight preliminary final on a Saturday night. It's basically a grand final rematch from 2023. The winners of both teams will go to the grand final, and Collingwood and Geelong advanced, with Collingwood defeating Adelaide, which we also spoke about on our previous podcast, Collingwood versus the Huddle Within, where we did get clowned on TikTok. I mentioned this last week, but we ended up being right, and they ended up going straight to the prelim, while Brisbane had to earn it, beating Gold Coast after losing to Geelong, who qualified in that other bracket. And Hawthorn took down Adelaide Crows at the Adelaide Oval. It was their first on the table versus 8th, and Crows go down in straight sets. So definitely underachieved, but considering Adelaide were 15th on the table last year, improving to first is no steep feat, and it just showed that they probably weren't ready for a deep finals run, especially given that a lot of these teams at the moment have a lot of experience there, and it's just showing that AFL, you don't necessarily have to be top of the table to win a grand final, and that's also always exciting as well. In other news, AFL is planning to bring in a sort of play-in wildcard game, I think including 9 and 10. So that's going to be really exciting. I think the way that the table is at the moment, when you have, I think, 18 teams and only 8 are allowed to qualify, it does leave questions to suggest whether they should have a wildcard game or not, especially if Tasmania is coming in 2028. Are we really going to have, 11 teams missing out on finals footy? Having the wild card game, especially when there's a week between the end of the season to the finals, I think will add us extra games, which will be more money for the AFL, but also that entertainment to see whether there will be a final spot. I think the way it's going to go is 7th will verse 10th, and 8th will verse 9th to queue up those like 7th and 8th spots. So I think that will be really exciting. I'm not sure if that's been official, but if it does, it will definitely make AFL a lot more exciting. And teams like the Western Bulldogs, who had a very strong percentage as well as a positive win-loss ratio, can have a chance to play finals footy. And if you look at it, they could have potentially went to the finals. So yeah, we'll have to see how that goes and if that gets applied next year. But then it would have been Brisbane and, Bulldogs and Sydney that would have been able to make a final spot, and their season wouldn't have been over. But in terms of the matches coming up, I think Geelong looked the strongest this year, if I'm honest. I'm a Pies fan. I'm always going to back my Pies. But this week will be tough against Brisbane. Brisbane looked really good against Gold Coast. And seeing Hawthorn knock Adelaide as they did makes me worried and think whether that game was just anyone could have bet Adelaide and they weren't as good, or Collingwood overachieved. It's hard to say. But I guess we'll find out this Saturday when we do take on Brisbane at the MCG, which I'm really excited for. I will be going to that game, and hopefully we come out with a massive victory there. And I think Geelong will make quick work of Hawks. I don't want to see any of these teams in the grand final. The only one I'm probably convinced that we can beat is Hawthorn. But at the same time, all these teams have beat us this year. Brisbane wrecked us, Hawks wrecked us, and Geelong, albeit beat us, but it was off a Jack Crisp miss on the siren, which you can take that loss all day. But again, these teams have had our number this season, so quite nervous going in, but always going to back the Pies and hoping for Premiership 17th. And this game will determine whether we get to that opportunity or not, which is always exciting as well. So AFL season is close to finishing up, and as we finish that up, we're moving into the NBA season. And NBA is fast ramping at the moment. Eurobasket's finally going on. We've got Alperen Şengün and Giannis beefing at the moment. Şengün saying that Giannis is not a good passer. That's probably been the biggest news in the NBA at the moment. You've obviously got the Kawhi situation now, who's seemed to be getting money from sponsorship that's been helping his contract. I don't know too much about it, but apparently one of the companies have gone bankrupt and they were sort of helping Kawhi Leonard fund his contract. So the Clippers are in a very, very weird place now, and Steve Ballmer is obviously acting as if he had nothing to do with it or he didn't know anything, which is probably the right way to go about it. Whether he does know anything about what happened with Kawhi and that company, it begs a question. But at the same time, it looks like Kawhi is going to be in big trouble as well. And yeah, it really does affect the Clippers. If Kawhi is not playing, I would like to think that Clippers will be at best a play-in team. But they definitely need Kawhi Leonard to make a deep playoff run. But the NBA hasn't given any sort of sanctions or punishments on Kawhi Leonard as of yet. So that's still kind of in the back burner. NBA Fantasy is starting soon. For anyone that's interested in listening to this podcast, I do run an NBA Fantasy League. If you are interested, please DM me or send a comment into this. It will be a $50 to $60 buy-in, leaning more to the more cheaper side, but it is extremely exciting. And for those that haven't played NBA basketball before, or fantasy basketball, happens every day, and you find yourself just checking the scores on a regular basis. The draft is always fun, and the league is always active when it comes to trades and communication. So that's always fun as well. I'm really looking forward to having another season of NBA Fantasy. I believe this will be our fifth NBA Fantasy, which is quite crazy as well, and it just continues to get better and better each year as people start becoming more sort of intelligent and ways they sort of trade and draft players. So it gets harder every single year as people obtain knowledge and get sample size of players. So again, that's going to be really exciting. And as AFL finishes, as I mentioned, NBA will make a start and sport will continue to be exciting. At the moment, if only NBA sort of started in September, it would probably be the best year for sports because all sports would be happening at once. You get the start of NFL, which we'll be talking about next, of course, midway into F1, finals footy, start of Premier League, and the list goes on and on. I'm pretty sure MLB playoffs are at the moment if you are an MLB fan. And then you got the rugby playoffs. But to be honest, I don't know nothing about the rugby. All I do know is that the Storm could win it this year and they're making a deep run, but the Raiders look like they're the favourites going in. So we'll keep tabs on it just so we can get those rugby fans to sort of feel good about their sport being talked about. But I don't know nothing about rugby, and maybe one day I'll get into it. But at the moment, it looks like the Storm are winning, and by default, that always makes me happy because the Storm are obviously located in Melbourne. And moving on to the NFL. So week 2 has occurred as I bring up my phone to get up the fixtures for the NFL. A bit of a Saints update. We're currently 0-2. But I will say our current starting quarterback, Spencer Rattler, has thrown twice for 200 plus yards. And against San Francisco, he actually threw for 3 touchdowns, which is quite impressive. We've lost both games within a touchdown, which is quite a straight feat. We have versus the 49ers, lost 26-21. They obviously have Christian McCaffrey, who's just a beast. Kittle's injured at the moment, and I have both of them on my fantasy team, but Kittle being injured allows for more touches for McCaffrey, and he seems to be going off at the moment. And the game of the round was definitely the Cowboys taking on the Giants. You had the Giants losing 37-40, who Malik Neighbors, what a guy, what a player. He is elite. I think he got 2 or 3 touchdowns this game, over 100 and so yards. His partner, his running mate, Will Robinson, had a killer as well. It was on my fantasy as well. And Russell Wilson had a pretty solid game until the end. But I think the main highlight winner is the Dallas kicker. He hit about 3 or 4 field goals. He forced one field goal, taking them to overtime, and he also won the game off the kick as well. Brandon Aubrey, I think his name is, and I think everyone was really happy with his performance, especially Dallas Cowboys, given that they are the biggest team and franchise in sports history and the NFL. So they get a lucky victory there. We had the Lions smashing the Bears, getting 52 points, the highest score of the round. Amon St. Brown had 4 touchdowns, which is amazing. He had a killer, and they get a victory there. We had the Chiefs losing their second game in the row. They're currently 0-2 at the moment and not looking like the Chiefs of old. And could this be an end for their sort of, I guess, dynasty? We'll have to wait and see, but 0-2 is not a good start there. You had the Buccaneers beating the Texans off a Rachaad White running drive in the last 3-4 seconds. And Rachaad White is a running back too. Bucky Irving is their main guy. He got them into that position, but they didn't go with him. They went with White, and it proved to be the right decision because White got them the match at the moment, or the victory. And to wrap it up, the Chargers are currently playing the Raiders. They're making quick work of them, 20-9 as we are recording this podcast. And the Falcons on primetime TV, Sunday Night Football, make quick work of the Vikings, which was quite a surprise there. And the Falcons didn't have a good start last week, but have bounced back with a victory. And they are our biggest rivals, being in the NFC South. I think they're going to take out the division. I mentioned that on the NFL podcast, which you can also check out too. They are looking strong and in a very positive position to take out that division and make a playoffs. And that's my opinion based on all the weapons that they've got and their sort of second-year quarterback having a good game as well. But on the bad news front, unfortunately, Joe Burrow is going to be out for 3 months, and that's a big blow for the Cincinnati Bengals. They obviously have the number one receiver in the NFL right now in Jamar Chase, who had a killer game once again. Now with no quarterback, it's very hard to see whether he will produce the same numbers. And he was the consensus number one pick on all NFL fantasy players. So for those that do have Jamar Chase in your NFL fantasy team, I'd suggest to trade that boy ASAP. Or if you do keep him, I don't think he's going to be producing top 5 wide receiver numbers, I think, without Joe Burrow. Obviously, they come as a pair, playing with each other at LSU for 3 or so years. And now being in the same NFL team together, it just seems as though that telepathic energy that they have and their read is not going to be the same with another quarterback. And that's going to really put down Jamar Chase. And I think 3 months is a massive blow. Like, they'll put him out till December. The playoffs start in January. So he's going to miss at least 12 games, which is going to be huge. Maybe 10 if he's lucky. So that's a massive loss for the Bengals. And that's probably the most significant injury happening at the moment. And it looks as though that Joe Burrow's injury luck is what's probably priming him at the moment, because when he's fit and healthy, the Bengals are a massive contender in the, I'm pretty sure it's the AFC. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I really apologize for that. I've got to get my conferences sort of picked up better. I think they are in the AFC, which is good. Like, as I get my table here, the trusty app on the table just helps everything out. But just categorizing AFC and NFC has always been something difficult for me being in Australia. But again, we get that update. We think that probably Bengals will miss out now, given that they have no Burrow. But we'll have to wait and see there. But that pretty much wraps up the NFL talk. And the last thing that I want to talk about, and it's something that I haven't talked about on the podcast. And for those that do know this, I have a weekly show on the WWE podcast reviewing Main Event. And Main Event is basically a pre-show on Monday Night Raw that puts out the wrestlers that are sort of up and coming or can't fit onto the main shows, just to give them that exposure to live crowds and also just to see how they perform in the ring. And the Main Event show itself, when it's recorded on TV, besides the matches that are previewed before Raw, have those 2 matches and also have snippets of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. So feel free to check that out on the WWE podcast. Look out for the podcast episodes for the Main Event review. I just released one yesterday reviewing Main Event as well. And when there are PLEs, which are pay-per-views, they now call them PLEs, I preview and review those each week as well. So this week in WWE news, we have, and my alarm's popping up. It's telling me to get the prelim tickets, but I already got those, so don't need to worry about that now. But what I was saying was that the current news in WWE is that WrestleMania 43 has been announced, and the location will be in Saudi Arabia. So I don't know what to think about that. It is the first WrestleMania that's going to be held outside North America. When I mean North America, I mean Canada and USA. It's going to be held in Saudi Arabia, I think in South Australia. Imagine South Australia. That'd be elite. But we all thought that the first place that it would be hosted outside of those two countries, it would be the UK at Wembley Stadium. But no, they've decided, and Triple H, who is currently the creative sort of content officer, the person that's in charge of storyline and all the business stuff, has taken the money and decided to have the WrestleMania at Saudi Arabia. There is a lot of angry people about this, and I am definitely one that's pretty puzzled with the decision. It wouldn't affect me as much as the Americans, but it just seems as though it's a money grab. I don't think that WrestleMania feel is going to be the same there. So it's very hard for me to sit there and say that it's the right decision or the correct ethical decision as well, given everything there in Saudi Arabia, whether you believe in that or not. It's obviously big for Saudi Arabian fans, so those that will be able to go to the match is very exciting, and it's going to bring in lots of revenue for the WWE, which I think that's what this decision was all about. But in other news, we have the new upcoming PLE called WrestlePalooza. And this PLE is the first ever PLE hosted on ESPN. For us international Australian listeners or viewers, we get to watch it on Netflix, so it doesn't affect us. But those in America, you have to only watch this on ESPN, and it will be a ESPN first PLE, as they've penciled in a deal with WWE to have occasional PLEs as well. In all kind of news I'm hearing, WrestlePalooza is set to be kind of the next big thing. You got WrestleMania, you got SummerSlam, you've got Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, and I think WrestlePalooza will fit into that core 5 PLEs, maybe even higher than Royal Rumble, maybe even higher than the other two. But again, for those that haven't watched WWE in a long time, AJ Lee is back after like 10 years. So she is CM Punk's wife. She's going to be taking on Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins this week at WrestlePalooza. You've got Brock Lesnar, who's back. He made his return at SummerSlam. He's taking on John Cena, who John Cena will be retiring at the end of the year. It's his farewell tour, and he'll be taking on Brock Lesnar. For the championship, you've got Cody Rhodes taking on Drew McIntyre. You've also got Stephanie Vaquer, La Primera, taking on Io Sky for the Women's World Championship. And I think to wrap it off, you've got the Usos taking on Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed. And that pretty much wraps up those 5 matches. So that'll be extremely exciting. Those that are into WWE, please let me know, because as I mentioned at the start of the episode, it's something that I want to explore more. It's something that I want to get to more on a regular basis. But again, that's been your 32-minute sport wrap-up. So we managed to get through all the main sports that I like in that time. And again, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, if you do like all the content that we're doing, if you're happy with those, please let me know. If you did like this episode, I'm more than happy to do a bit of a sport update once a month, or even every week if you guys like to just break down different types of sports. But again, really interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Again, it's been another episode of the Huddle Within podcast. So thank you very much for tuning in. If you did like the episode, if you do want to hear more, feel free to subscribe wherever you do get your podcast. 5-star reviews also very appreciated. And yeah, continuing to listening on always makes me have a smile to my face, and seeing the listeners on my Spotify stats. So again, it really means the world to me. So again, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys next week. Cheers. So that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Huddle Within podcast. I appreciate you for tuning in and being part of this community where we go beyond the game and into what really matters. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who sees sports just the way that we do. And hey, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on my social medias, which will be linked below. Send in your thoughts and even be part of a future episode. Until next time, keep that passion alive, stay in the huddle, and remember, it's always deeper than the game. Cheers.